So hello everyone, welcome to Baji Rao IAS Academy previous year question paper analysis. Now in this session, we have been discussing the previous year questions that were asked by UPSC in the year 2022. Now these questions which we are going to discuss today are from General Studies paper 2, Indian Constitution, Polity, India's relations with the other countries, right? So the first question that we are going to discuss here, it is about the governance and the social justice aspect of the syllabus. Now the first question is about besides the welfare schemes. Now the government of India provided, or it provides various welfare schemes for the different sections of the society, particularly poor and marginalized and vulnerable sections of the society. So besides providing these welfare schemes, India needs a deft management of inflation and unemployment to serve the poor and underprivileged sections of the society. So the directive word given here is discuss. We need to discuss these questions. Discussion means we need to write different dimensions of it, both positives, negatives, advantages, disadvantages, everything. Okay, so now no doubt that Indian government has been providing number of welfare schemes to various sections of the society. So in this context, inflation and unemployment are becoming one of the key challenges or the major challenges that the government of India has been facing. So because of the unemployment, we have the demographic dividend and that is being lost. And because of the inflation, higher price rise, the economic growth slows down. So this further impacts the poor and underprivileged sections of the society. So if we can manage, or if we can manage the inflation and unemployment in a deft manner, then that could help the poor and underprivileged sections of the society. How? So we will see that. Now India is a country with a leading demographic dividend in the world. Okay, so we have the highest demographic dividend. Now in this context, what exactly means the demographic dividend? Demographic dividend means the highest number of population in the working age. Okay, so in fact India's median age is also around 28.5. so in this context, we have the largest demographic dividend, and in fact we are the fifth largest economy in terms of GDP. Okay, so in terms of the purchasing power parity, we are the third largest economy in the world. However, on the other hand, inflation and unemployment are the key challenges, because according to Center for Monitoring Indian Economy, India's inflation amounts to around 6.7% and India's overall unemployment ranges from 6.8%. Okay, so this is one of the highest levels of unemployment that India has been facing. So despite coming up with number of welfare schemes like PM Awas Yojana, Ayushman Bharat, Mudra Yojana, so we have announced a wide variety of welfare programs. However, still a considerable number of population under poverty. Because of the COVID-19 pandemic also, a number of people were still under the poverty cycle. Now in this context, how can we manage, how can we make the deft management of inflation and unemployment? Okay, so how deft management of inflation and unemployment will help the Indian economy? So firstly, the deft management will help in smooth functioning of demand and supply chains. Now demand and supply chain smooth functioning is very important so that inflation will be under control. So for example, if there is any mismatch between demand and supply, that could create either deflation or inflation. Now what is inflation? Inflation is general rise in prices of goods. So this is called as inflation. Now, so positive growth cycle will also gets impacted by the inflation and unemployment. So therefore, it is very crucial that managing the demand supply chains and also ensuring positive growth cycle will further create more and more employment opportunities, gainful employment opportunities for our youth. Secondly, the deft management will also reduce the overall production cost. How? Because the deft management will further attract more and more investment into our Indian economy. Investment means more technology, more innovative production factors. So that over a period of time will lead to the declining production cost and will also minimize the unemployment rate in India. So the third factor is that it creates a favorable investment environment. Okay, so conducive and favorable investment environment is very important, that attracts more and more investments from other countries. Okay, so therefore it lays the strong foundation for creating more gainful employment opportunities for country's youth, and that could further decline, or that could further reduce the overall unemployment rate in India. Now apart from that, fiscal management is also a very important. For example, India has also been facing the problem of high fiscal deficit, revenue deficit. Okay, so therefore in this context we need to manage the fiscal deficit. So that is also one of the targets of Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Act. Now this Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Act has also mandated the government to gradually reduce the fiscal deficit over a period of time. So however, due to COVID-19 pandemic, the government was not able to meet its fiscal deficit targets. Now, in this context, the government should reduce, or government should focus on reducing the fiscal deficit, and that money can help in providing the welfare schemes, funding for the welfare schemes. And apart from that, management of inflation and unemployment rate reduction, will further address the economic complications, economic complexities that were created by recent COVID-19 pandemic. So we all know the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on the economy. So it's multiplier impact on the economy. So apart from that, we also have a set of ambitious goals. Those goals are called as sustainable development goals. See, these sustainable development goals and achieving them by the 2030 are very important for developing country like India, because this sustainable development goals have some of the ambitious goals like no poverty, zero hunger, gender equality, health care for all, and reducing inequalities. Everything has been included as part of the sustainable development goals. Okay, so therefore reducing the inflation and increasing the employment opportunities will have a chain or a multiplier effect on achieving the sustainable development goals. So apart from that, we have the Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan. So Atmanirbhar Bharat means self-reliant India, right? So in this context, this will the debt management will also help in achieving the Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan goal. So in this context, what are the steps needed? So what are the steps we should be taken in this regard so that we can deft manage both inflation and unemployment? Now firstly, the Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Act guidelines, they have to be strictly adhered, they have to be strictly followed. Okay, so year on year the government has been escaping the Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Act guidelines. Okay, so that ultimately impacts Indian economy by increasing the fiscal deficit. So therefore this should be kept in mind. So apart from that, the Finance Commission, which is constituted every 5 years by the president, it also makes some of the recommendations. Okay, so ensure the fiscal health. So in this context, the qualitative and quantitative instruments of monetary policy should also be taken into consideration while deciding any major policy and reducing the unemployment rates and inflation as well. So this could be the first step that have to be taken at the macroeconomic level. So apart from that, Manrega has been started. What is Manrega? Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act, right? So however, this is solely confined to the rural areas. But what about the urban areas? Urban areas also have a significant number of poor populations. So therefore, there is a need for urban Manrega as well. Now, because of the urban Manrega, the urban poor will get benefit. Urban poor will get a proper livelihood through the urban Manrega. Okay, because according to an estimate, around 7.8% of the urban unemployment rate, so total unemployment is in urban areas as okay. Now apart from that, apart from those steps that we had already taken, that is urban Manrega, the qualitative and quantitative monetary policy instruments, so there's a need for more and more skill development initiatives. Okay, there were estimates that the total skilled population in India is less than around 5%. So therefore, we need to skill more and more populations under various schemes, because that is the essence of the economy. Okay. So when we skill more and more populations, we can unleash the true potential of our existing demographic dividend. So please remember, our total working age population is more than any other country. Okay, so because China followed the one child policy, their demographic dividend also declining at a rapid pace. Okay, So in this context, in order to benefit from our demographic dividend, we need to skill more and more populations under various skill development initiatives. So secondly, we need to talk about the need to prepare a buffer initiatives. Okay, so there should be a buffer so that in case of any global economic slowdown, that will not impact the Indian economy. Okay, so those spillover effects will not impact the Indian economy, and that is also very important and very essential. Okay, so for example, what does the global spillover effects means? For example, recently the war between Gaza and Israel and Russia-Ukraine war. So those things have a huge impact on the Indian economy. So they can increase the inflation by curtailing the supply chains, and they also led to the wide-scale unemployment. Okay, so in this context, it is very important that we create a buffer initiative, and this buffer initiative will save Indian economy from the spillover effects. So apart from that, advanced computing technology and data analytics should be used in this context. Okay, so now we are living in a globalized world, so in this context we need to use advanced computing technology and data analytics so that we can strategize our inflation management. Okay, so how can we manage inflation in a better manner? Okay, so that ultimately help in serving the poor and underprivileged sections of the society. So apart from that, more financial inclusion initiatives. Now Jan Dhan Yojana, okay, it is a financial inclusion initiative. Apart from that, we also talked about JAM Trinity. So this is also a financial inclusion initiative. So these financial inclusion initiatives over a period of time will help to reduce the poverty levels and will also empower the poor populations, because now they will have access to the financial services, and that is very important. So therefore, it helps in financial inclusion, and financial inclusion in turn reduces the poverty and empowers the populations. Now we have been talked about all the steps that have to be taken in order to reduce unemployment rates and also ensure that inflation is under control. So in this context, what are the various challenges? We have various challenges in order to deft manage both inflation and unemployment. So firstly, no doubt that we are living in the age of globalization. So in the age of globalization, generally what happens, that an issue which has taken far away from the borders of our country will impact our country's economy. For example, we have seen the fertilizer crisis, energy security, the COVID-19 pandemic, and China, Taiwan, everything that has severely impacted the supply chain resilience of our economy. So in the age of globalization, it is challenging that we remain untouched. Okay, so we can never expect that we will never untouched by the global issues and the global happenings. Okay, so that we have already experienced from Russia-Ukraine war, Israel and Gaza conflict, and even the COVID-19 pandemic and China-Taiwan issues and supply chain resilience or supply chain disruptions. And apart from that, the other challenges like floods, cyclones and drought-like conditions have been damaging the infrastructure. They have been further damaging the capability of the countries in providing the employment opportunities. So countries will not have the adequate economic capacities in order to finance the infrastructure projects because of the floods, cyclones and droughts. So this further leads to the poor inflation management, and also these events further led to the large scale migration and poverty and hunger. So not just in India but across the globe. So India should learn lessons from these instances. So in this context, what should be the way forward that we have to discuss? So, okay, so the way forward include, there's a need for promoting local cooperative societies. So local cooperative societies usually work on the basis of community participation. Okay, community participation is essence of successful working of any organization. So in this context, there's a need for local cooperative societies. They should be encouraged, and we also have a setup called self-help groups. So these self-help groups should be encouraged to provide employment at the local level. Now, apart from that, India's logistics infrastructure should also be further revamped. So we have a higher logistic cost, and higher logistic cost, that is a further disincentive in attracting more and more investments and other infrastructure projects. So therefore, in this context, we need to revamp India's logistics infrastructure so that it should be more robust and integrated. It would reduce the production cost, and it would create new employment opportunities across India. So apart from that, there should be more diverse skill enhancement initiatives to improve the employment opportunities. Okay, so this should be the possible way forward in this context. Okay, so the next question that we are going to discuss is about the the donor agencies usually fund the community development projects in various programs, for example poverty alleviation, improvement of health, agriculture, etc. So in this context, the question has been asking that, do you agree with the view that increasing dependence on donor agencies for development reduces the importance of community participation in the developmental processes? Okay, so the question has been asking that, do you agree with the view that increasing dependence, so any country which has been increasingly dependent on these donor agencies, for example UNICEF. Okay, so UNICEF is a donor organization. So any country which is dependent on these donor organizations for development reduces importance for community participation in the development process. You need to justify this answer. Now firstly, understand, so what exactly is the donor agency? So what is donor agency means? So donor agency means any foreign government or any foreign organization or institution, so that usually provides support to the social welfare activities. Now, what does social welfare activities means? The social welfare activities means poverty alleviation, hunger eradication, gender empowerment, schooling, and child development, healthcare, agriculture, etc. So these activities comes under the social welfare activities or activities of social service. Okay, so any foreign country or any organization which has been involved in the social welfare activities is called as a donor agency. So here one example is also given, UNICEF. So UNICEF can be called as a donor agency or the donor organization. So because UNICEF raise funds in India. Okay, so UNICEF is the only UN agency that actually depends on voluntary contributions. So anyone can contribute to UNICEF. So you as an individual can contribute to the UNICEF. Okay, so it accepts the voluntary contributions. So UNICEF relies on these voluntary contributions from public donors and businesses, foundations, and even the individuals. Okay, so the raised money by UNICEF will be used for various social welfare programs across India. Okay, so this is actually the concept of donor agency. So if any country which is excessively relied on these donor agencies will not focus or will not give much more importance to the community development. Now community participation is very important for the successful implementation of these welfare programs. Now community based organization usually refers to any organization which is aimed at making desired improvements in communities' social health, well-being, or overall functioning. And this is known as a community-based organization. So in this context, what exactly is the importance of donor agencies in the development process? So how they facilitate the development? So that is what we have to learn. So firstly, they help in mobilization of resources because they raise funds from individuals, organizations, and businesses. So therefore, since they have a huge network, so they can quickly raise funds. So these agencies have a much more wider reach. So therefore, they can raise high amount of funds in less time. So these funds can be used in other welfare programs that we have already discussed. So secondly, so these organizations very often are backed by strong technology. okay, or innovation. So therefore it ultimately helps in more efficiency and effectiveness as well. So they also work in a more transparent manner. So transparency and accountability of any organization is very important for its ultimate success. So after that, we should talk about the management of human resources and operational efficiency as well. Okay, so whenever we talk about these donor agencies, they have huge human resources across the world, and they also have the desired levels of operational efficiency. So therefore, in this context, their labor productivity is very high. Since their labor productivity is very high, those funds can be used in a more efficient and effective manner for the development or for the social welfare activities. Now apart from that, we need to talk about the sharing of best practices. For example, any agency which has invented best practice and that is successfully implemented, so those best practices are being emulated by the other organizations as well. For example, World Health Organization has helped in better health and well-being across India. Okay, so best practices will be shared across these organizations. Now in this context, we should not agree that dependence on these donor agencies will reduce importance for the community participation. Okay, so because both have to be held in hand. So on the one hand, the donor agencies providing funding by mobilizing resources. On the other hand, the community participation ensures that the funds will be used in a better manner for the community development. Okay, so community organizations will always command the local expertise. Okay, so if you look at any community organization in different fields, whether it is agriculture, women empowerment, or healthcare, okay, so they have the required or the desired levels of local expertise. Okay, so therefore they are supplier of the labor force, so they help in supplying the labor force. Secondly, so India being the democratic nation, okay, so this is the democratic nation, so therefore the government of the day will always prioritize the community organization in the developmental process. Okay, so for example, India is a democratic country, so India want a decentralization, and India want that the grassroots level organizations and the people at the grassroots level will actively participate in the various government processes. So therefore, in this context, the government will always prioritize the community organization in the developmental process. Now after that, the community-based organization is very important for the success of bottom-up planning. Now what does bottom-up planning exactly means? So bottom-up planning is dependent on the decentralized level of planning. So planning which is taken into consideration the local level requirements. Okay, so planning which is taking into consideration the local level requirements is called as the bottom-up planning in India. So therefore, in case of democratic decentralization has taken place, it has to be a success. So after that, the reducing dependency is a perception of threat. Okay, so actually it says that reducing dependency of these donor agencies is actually a perception of threat the local population feel. So whenever these donor agencies have taken up the mega projects or large scale projects, so in this context, the government should intervene. It is the job of the government to reduce this perception, and this can be possibly if transparency in the working of donor agencies done with mandatory accountability clauses to the government and local public. Okay, so this says that so these donor agencies should be more and more transparent, more and more accountable and responsible to the people. Okay, so the fundraising activities should be conducted in a transparent and accountable manner, so that those funds will not be used in anti-national activities or any other illegitimate purposes. So therefore, in this context, the government should be both regulator and as well as the facilitator of these donor organizations as well as the community developmental projects. Now, while writing the conclusion for this answer, so you can conclude this answer in this way. So both the donor agency and the community participation should complement one another. So you cannot see both of them independently or separately. Okay, so they should complement the one another. Now donor agencies bring finance. The required levels of finance will be raised by these donor agencies, and then they will finance the community developmental projects, or they take up any large scale of mega projects. So they have the required or the desired levels of finance and even technology as well. Now, when we talk about the community-based organizations, the community-based organizations have the desired levels of human resources. Okay, so they have all the resources, and these donor agencies have finance and technology. So together they can push India towards a greater developmental trajectory. And see, India has ambitious targets when it comes to the human development. So we cannot expect the government only to have a major stakes when it comes to the human development, poverty alleviation, improving health and education. So it is also very important that we need to encourage the participation of these community, encourage community participation. We need to encourage these donor agencies to finance more and more social welfare programs. So only then we can achieve our ambitious goals such as human development, universal health care, education, access, and even more importantly, the Sustainable Development Goals 2030 agenda. Okay, so in order to achieve all the goals of sustainable development by 2030, it is also very important that the community participation and the donor agencies participation should be very important, right? So the next question that we are going to discuss is about right to education. Okay, so the Right to Free and Compulsory Education Act was passed in the year 2009. So we all know about that. So this particular legislation has envisioned that students from 6 to 14 years of age will be provided free and compulsory education. So therefore it has made education at the early level as a fundamental right. So however, the question has been saying that the Right of Free and Compulsory Education Act 2009 remains inadequate. Okay, so it has not been fulfilling the aims and objectives. It remains inadequate in promoting incentive-based system for children's education. So without actually generating awareness about the importance of schooling. Okay, so in order to achieve the objectives, the desired objectives, the right of children for free and compulsory education remains inadequate. It has not promoted adequate levels of awareness among the children about the schooling. Now in this context, please understand what exactly the Right to Education Act 2009. Okay, so this is called as RTE Act 2009. So this has been passed by the Parliament in the year 2009, 4th August. Okay, so this particular piece of legislation provides for free and compulsory education for children in the age of 16 to 14 years, and it has also made education a fundamental right under Article 21 subclause A. Okay, so Article 21 is about right to life and personal liberty, and Supreme Court has been widening the scope of Article 21 and including various other articles. So recent being is right to privacy. So that was also included as part of Article 21. So in this context, the Parliament through a legislation, Article 21A subclause A made right to education a fundamental right. So therefore, in this context, India is one among the 135 countries that have made education a fundamental right for every child. Okay, now education has become a fundamental right for every child. So in this context, what are the main features of the RTE Act 2009? Okay, so this is called as RTE Right to Education Act 2009. So in this context, what should be the main features of RTE Act? So firstly, free and compulsory education will be provided for all up to class 8. So this is the first feature of the Right to Education Act 2009. So apart from this act, Apart from this feature, there are other provisions also. For example, ensuring adequate teacher student ratio. Okay, so providing adequate drinking water facilities, sanitation, and separate toilets for both girls and boys, and providing adequate infrastructure in every school are some of the major features of this program. Okay, ensuring norms and standards in teaching is also one of the objectives of this program. So therefore, apart from that, there are also special provisions for admission of children out of school. Okay, so if you look at the trends, school out of children out of school has been to some extent higher in the rural areas. So therefore, this has included special provision for admission of children out of schools. Okay, they have joined in a school, but after first class or the second class, they drop out of a school. So therefore, the special focus will be on children out of school. So they will be admitted in a school in a age appropriate class. Okay, so this has also a special provision in this regard. Now, apart from that, this particular legislation also has a provision for zero tolerance against discrimination and harassment on any ground. For example, harassment on the basis of caste, religion, culture, ethnicity. Okay, so there should be no tolerance, or it is a zero tolerance against discrimination and harassment at the school level. Now, no child can be held back or expelled from school till class 8. Okay, till class 8, no child can be expelled from the school. So all private schools should or must reserve 25% of their seats for children belonging to the socially disadvantaged sections and economically weaker sections of the society. Okay, so all private schools must mandatorily reserve at least 25% of the total seats in this regard. So apart from that, there are certain incentives that are being provided to encourage both parents and children to complete their education. Now, what are those incentives that are being provided to encourage parents and children to complete education? So firstly, they provide free of cost textbooks, uniforms, and stationery items. So this is very important. So they are being provided free of cost textbooks, uniforms, and stationery items, so that it is an incentive for the students to come and join the schools. So apart from that, the midday meal scheme is also being provided to the children who are school going. Okay, so apart from PM, as part of the PM Poshan program. Okay, so this is PM Poshan program. Around 11.80 crore children across class 1 and 8 are benefited under the PM Poshan program. Okay, so the government has also launched the Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan. Okay, so the aim of Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan providing an integrated education for every child. Okay, so Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan has also launched. So to add additional classrooms, toilets, and drinking water facilities is also provided as part of this. Okay, so separate toilets for both girls and students, and drinking water facilities, midday meal schemes, and additional classrooms, and even the digital classrooms are being provided for students. Providing education to the differently abled children with special needs. Okay, so we have launched the Accessible India campaign. So therefore, providing infrastructure, the Divyangjan friendly infrastructure. In a similar sense, the right to education has also have a special provisions with respect to the differently abled children with special needs. So this also takes care of bridging the digital gap, offering the computer education to the children. Now in rural areas, digital divide is one of the most prominent challenge. So in order to address the digital gap or the digital divide, the computer education is offered to every child or every children. So apart from that, strengthening or providing quality education to madrasas. Okay, so this is the program that was launched by the Union government. So this program with the objective of providing quality education for students who are in madrasas. Okay, so therefore it will bring qualitative education and follow the national education system standards in all the subjects for the students. Now in this context, there are certain issues in achieving the objectives of the right to education. So what are those issues? So still there's a lack of awareness among the child labor, migrant children, and differently abled children about the government incentives such as free education, books, uniforms, and other incentives. Okay, so still people lack the awareness. So even if you look at the children of migrant laborers, they are generally out of school. Okay, so they are not in the schools. So therefore the child labor have been increasing, and migrant children is also a problem, and differently abled children are generally don't go to schools. So they lack the awareness about free education, books, uniforms, and other incentives. Now apart from that, there's a lack of awareness about the 25% of reservation that is being provided to the disadvantaged sections of the society. Okay, so these disadvantaged sections of the society, even though in private schools 25% of the seats are reserved for these disadvantaged sections, they lack the awareness about the reservation. So apart from that, they lack awareness about the fundamental right of Article 21A. Okay, so Article 21A has been included by Right to Education Act 2009. Okay, so even the people lack awareness about the fundamental right, Article 21A. So the minorities children, especially the poor class, they are unaware about the special provisions under the providing quality education for students in madrasas. Okay, so the key issues that have been arising in achieving the goals of RTI are mainly because of lack of awareness among the people. So in this context, what steps should be taken to create awareness in a large scale? So firstly, we need to focus on a comprehensive and holistic campaign. Okay, so for example, at the local level we have sarpanches, ward members, and even the self-help groups. So therefore the representatives of local bodies and sarpanches of various panchayats, they should organize campaigns regularly so that they can improve awareness among the local populations. So apart from that, we need to talk about the awareness generation about the incentives that were being provided by the government under the Right to Education Act, and even various provisions like reservation of 25% of the seats for children who are socially backward and economically disadvantaged, right? So therefore we can effectively use the social media platforms like Facebook and YouTube in generating more and more awareness among various communities. So apart from that, the government teachers can also play a key role or the major role to visit the backwards areas to enhance awareness among the people that the government has been providing various incentives, okay, such as midday meal scheme, uniforms, etc. For example, when we talk about the incentives that are being provided by the governments to the parents and children, Andhra Pradesh government has launched a program called Amma Vodi. So under this program, 15,000 rupees are being provided to every mother of a child who is sending her kids to the school, whether private school or the government school. So therefore, this is a kind of an incentive for the mother to send her children to the school. In this way, encouraging the school going children, encouraging the literacy rates, and reducing these dropout rates in these schools. So therefore it is very important that we need to implement the right to free and compulsory education act 2009 in a letter and spirit. Okay, so this is the essence of nation building and achieving the ambitious targets. Okay, so that's all for today, and tomorrow also we will discuss few more important questions. Okay, so thank you so much, and if you like the video, please like the video and also subscribe to Baji Rao IAS Academy. Thank you.